Muzzle Break podcast. I'm here with my co-host Brian and our guest Travis Reynolds. He is a former Navy pilot. Was captain your ending rank in the Navy, or
lieutenant in the Navy?
Okay, lieutenant. I'm not sure how that all worked or whatever, but we'll get into that later during this episode. So we have upcoming classes next month. We have Green Line Tactical coming out to do a pistol red dot course the 16th and 17th of May. We also have a pistol intensive course taught by Sonny, Evan, and Christian here at the gun shop. That will be at the end of the month. Check out griffinarms.net for all details and availability and the ability to sign up through our paywall. Also in July, we'll have Kim KJ Kamikaze. She will be out to teach a female CCW class. It was in June, but we had to reschedule. She had to have some minor surgery, so she'll be healing up from that for the next couple of months, and she will be back out here in July. So please sign up for that, ladies. It is a great opportunity. She's a really, really skilled teacher. She will be on the podcast next week. So really excited for you guys to come and join us for all of that stuff. But let's get into it with Travis. So Travis, career military guy. Tell us about that. Tell us about your career in the military, how you started, where you ended up, and whatnot. You can give us any background on your story that we want. This is like really informal. I know it seems, we got lights and microphones and stuff like that. It seems really formal, but we're just here to kind of have a roundhouse, conversation, or round table conversation, not roundhouse, because he can probably roundhouse us better than most. So anyways, talk to us, Travis.
Yeah, man. Came from a small town, joined the Navy when I was 17, delayed entry program in high school, didn't have a whole lot of options.
Yeah, we live in a place that is very, like, what would you call it, Brian? Depressed?
Rural depressed.
Yeah. Brian and I have these conversations about culture shock, because he came from Massachusetts and whatnot, and, and then Florida, which
I lived in Florida for
lots of money.
So like coming here, I saw like a horse and buggy, and I'm like, what the is that?
Yeah, that can be different.
But you were born and raised. You're kind of from a generational family in this area, like seven generations. Okay, yeah. So when did your family kind of immigrate here to the U.S.?
Early 1800s.
Okay,
so
cool.
The second generation of my family came to Venango County in like 1810.
Okay.
And on the firearms front, we have what we call the Reynolds rifle. The first American-born Reynolds male bought it from the Mercer Forge.
Oh, really?
And passed it down from father to son, and then my dad received it from his uncle, and then passed it on to me and my son.
Oh, that's awesome. So
yeah.
Was that a flintlock rifle, or a flintlock that got converted to a cap?
Ball.
Okay, so it probably was converted at some point.
Yeah.
A lot of those flintlock rifles ended up getting converted about that time. That's when they were converting. 1812. We have one in the store that's from 1812, and it started life as a flintlock, and then it got converted by the U.S. government. So, like, your family, they were just like farmers that showed up, coal miners, or farmers. Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Big farming background, and wound up working in various industries. My uncle he brought cable TV to Sandy Lake, Pennsylvania. He was the first one that strung the wire.
Okay.
And then my grandfather, they worked at Joy Mining Company. My dad worked there.
What inspired you to go to the military? Are you the only person in your family that decided to go to the military?
My dad was a Marine.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to be a Marine since I was teeny tiny.
Okay.
And then my dad actually is the one that told me to go get an education elsewhere. He had taught me how to run, shoot, fight in camp. So
cool.
He told me to go to the Navy and get an education. That's what I did.
What did he do in the Marine Corps? Do you know anything about that? Or
he was in the Armory.
So did he get deployed to Vietnam or anything like that?
He was down in Cuba during the Bay of Pigs.
Interesting. Oh, really? Okay, yeah. That's an interesting. We did a whole episode on that kind of stuff with Uncle Guns a couple months ago. Any other distant relatives in the military, or is that
pretty much
just
everybody?
him?
Yeah, uncle was in the Army.
Oh, really? Okay.
I had an uncle in the Army, one in the Navy, one in the Air Force. We kind of covered all the.
That's cool.
So big military background, and I always wanted to serve. So I signed up as soon as I could. And
So what made you join the Navy? What was like interesting about that?
it was my last choice. I looked at all the other ones, and I wanted to be a Marine. Caught the recruiter lying, so that was kind of a deal breaker. Dad didn't really want me pulling triggers for a living. Wanted me to go get an education, so I went to the Navy. My initial plan was to be, I wanted to be like Navy diver, EOD style, jump out of airplanes and blow it up. They only gave me two choices. They, based on my scores, they said I could work on nuclear reactors or nuclear missiles.
Yeah.
And they were both on submarines.
Yeah.
And I was a kid that didn't have a whole lot of options, and Dad said he wouldn't give me a job. So he kind of put me into that corner. So I chose missiles, spent 8 years on submarines.
Yeah, we talked about that because that's what I signed up to do was ET on a submarine. And yeah, that's a really interesting thing that people don't understand. When you go to MEPS, they're like, they test you and then they look at you and they say, depending on what is needed that day, they're like, okay, you're going to. What did they say when they looked at you, Brian?
Filled out my shit at the recruiter.
Yeah, me too. But they gave you a bunch. They didn't give you any jobs. They just said, you eat this boot, and they're like, he ate the whole laces and everything.
No, I told you. I told you. I was guessing on the thing. I'm like, ASVAB, I don't have time for this. I'm going to the infantry. I don't have time for this.
Yeah, okay. Peter, you were waving your fingers around. What's wrong? Are you cold? What do you need, Peter? I want to make my sound engineer absolutely.
I didn't want
thank you
anybody
for
to get
interrupting.
cold.
What?
Sorry, I didn't want anybody to get cold.
Are you guys cold?
No,
You
I'm
good?
good.
All right.
All right.
Peter, shut up. No, I'm just kidding.
But like,
Peter's the best. Everybody, I know you'll never see him. He's
Am I
like
sweating?
Wilson. He's like Wilson. He's like Wilson on Home
Castaway?
Improvement.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How terrible was it to be in a submarine?
It wasn't my gig. It was a really interesting experience. I got to do things that, I never would have even dreamt of. Got to shoot 6 test missiles my first deployment.
What's that like?
It's,
Is that noisy?
It's a crazy experience. You gotta, you have a submarine that's 565 feet long, 40 feet high, and you shoot a missile off that weighs approximately 130,000 pounds, and the whole boat bends and
Really?
pushes, and yeah, it's really, really loud, and it's a really interesting experience.
Was
What
it
do you
just?
think? Yeah,
What
go
was
ahead.
it? Did they have like a specific area where they're like, okay, you can only shoot there?
Yeah, so just like a gun range, our net is what they call it, is essentially you can fire off the coast of Florida, and then they land approximately around Africa.
They're fucking wiping out.
Yeah, they just hit the water. They
Yeah.
off the coast of South Africa is typically where the net lands.
Could you imagine being a Somali pirate, like looking for ships and you see this thing flying through the air and then just tank your boat out? Holy shit.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. They're
You'd have some.
These weren't nuclear though, right?
well, they're nuclear missiles, but that we take off the warheads, put on telemetry pods. So, and when they come back in, they'll typically have airplanes in the air taking pictures as the reentry vehicles come back into orbit and re-enter the atmosphere.
They actually go out of the atmosphere and come back in.
They're
that's
they're
interesting.
little spaceships.
Wow, that's cool. I didn't know that, I guess.
It's a really interesting technology. The missiles go up into low orbit. They roll over. They have reentry vehicles on them, which are just warheads.
Yeah.
And then they'll roll over and just spin one off, and it's a free fall coming back in, and it'll spin off a number of them. And it just looks like beams of light coming in because they go so fast.
Can you imagine being a
Who
little...
forgot to take this nuclear warhead?
So, and they can only fire those when they're submerged. They can't fire them breach,
Correct.
right? Yeah, because they'll break in half.
Well, they
Essentially.
tried that and they welded some missile decks shut. Because the missile will come off and the first stage rocket motor fires. They tried from the surface.
Yeah.
They welded the entire deck shut. So you have missile hatches that come open on a submarine.
Yeah.
They welded all the hatches shut because the rocket motor was that
Oh.
hot. It just welded the whole deck. So
the next one was
they
like-
couldn't open them again.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that was way back in the day,
Yeah.
early testing type stuff. But
Yeah, can you imagine just being like the first guy that did like untested technology and they're like, push the button and
Yeah,
then
see what happens.
See what
Why not?
happens. Yeah.
Is there any place where that you can actually test nuclear?
No, we don't. We
Like
don't do that.
Bikini Atoll
Yeah, we
or
don't
whatever.
do that stuff
Yeah.
anymore. We did so much in the 50s and 60s, and
Yeah, we microwaved everybody.
Yeah, we did a lot of crazy testing in the Navy.
It's why you are the way you are now.
Probably.
Yeah.
He ate the boot and the pencil we gave him for the ass.
Where'd the box of crayons go?
So the submarine comes up to surface, opens the hatch.
No, it's underwater.
The whole time.
So
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, it's underwater.
Yeah.
The missile tube has an enclosure on it. So the missile hatch, we pressurize the missile tube to equalize the pressure between the seawater and the tube, so it doesn't crush the hatch. It comes up to a launch depth, and then the hatch opens, the missile's inside, and then it's a coordinated. As soon as the rocket motor fires, then the enclosure has an explosive cord in it, and it'll break open as the missile's coming up, and the air that pressurizes the tube, the missile actually comes up in that bubble of air, and the missile's actually dry the whole way.
Wow.
And then it pops out of the water. And it's got an accelerometer in the inertial system. Once it senses a certain negative G, where it's slowing down, then the rocket motor fires, and then it does a submarine avoidance maneuver. You can see it on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
It'll come up out of the water, rocket motor fires, and then it'll go off to the side and fly, and then it'll go on course.
Okay. That's interesting.
And that's because they had, during testing, they had some rocket motors fail, and then the missile comes back down, hits the submarine.
Crushes everybody.
Wow.
It's a big donk.
Yeah. So this would be what time frame?
I joined
90s?
in 96.
Oh, I was going to say, late
Yeah,
90s.
96
Okay, cool.
to 2006. I was an enlisted missile technician on subs. 8 years did that, and then I put in for a program later.
Yeah, so just to finalize on that, so what class submarine were you on? Trident? Was that be a Trident class?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Ohio, it's the Ohio class.
Ohio class.
Yeah,
Okay.
SSBN. I was on the West Virginia.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how many? They're floats, right? Do they call them floats or do they call them
Patrols?
Patrols. Okay.
Yeah,
How
I
many
did
of those
five.
you
I
do?
did 5 strategic deployments.
So they were like prepping us for this. I never got to go. Like we've covered this in an earlier podcast, whatever. But they would always tell us, like, oh yeah, you eat like kings on that boat and all.
They
that
always
stuff.
say submarines eat better.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the food wasn't bad. It wasn't great. There
Was it good like the first week, and then you were like, oh,
Well, you know
it's dog
I
shit.
don't know if you've ever seen boxes of food going into a prison, but we had meat that said for institutional use only. That
okay.
pretty much means going
So
to
that was a
convicts.
myth. That was just my recruiter telling me that, like, to
Well,
look forward to something that really wasn't.
There
the,
were
the
some
case.
stories where a helicopter gets diverted from a carrier because the ice cream machine's broken on the submarine and it's that critical.
Yeah.
That stuff doesn't happen. I mean, we ran out of milk just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Midway into deployment, all the fresh vegetables go away.
Mhm.
Guys are using 10 heads of lettuce to make one salad because it's all rotten. You just got to keep peeling off.
Yeah.
What about the bunk beds?
Yeah, the racks were okay.
Teeny, small.
They were actually bigger than the coffin racks that I slept in on a carrier.
On a carrier. Okay.
Yeah. I could they were 6 feet long, 24 inches by 24 inches. So I could just roll over and my shoulders would touch, and that was fine.
So Travis, tell us about the transition from going from being an enlisted guy to on a submarine to being in the aeronautics. Do they just call it aeronautics?
Aviation program.
Aviation program in the Navy. What's that transition look like, and like how what made you desire to do that?
So I kind of found aviation when I was 18.
Okay.
I joined the Navy as a submarine guy, and then the summer before I left, I learned to skydive at the Grove City Airport.
Okay.
And completely fell in love with the sky. So when I went to boot camp, I tried to reclassify into like helicopter door gunner, anything aviation that I could.
Mm-hmm.
But I was locked into the advanced electronics field.
Yeah.
And I was also a submarine volunteer.
And they don't want to get rid of those guys.
They
Those
just
guys
they
are like,
wouldn't let me go.
Exactly.
I had to do my contract. I looked at various options and basically arrived at the decision that I just started going to college. I was taking classes when I was afloat. I was taking classes at night whenever I was in between deployments. But I had that love of aviation through skydiving. And then about 3 years after I was in the Navy, I decided to learn to be a pilot.
Okay.
My dad was a pilot, flew himself around for his job, and I just wanted to make my living in the sky. So I called him up one day and said, "Hey, Dad, this is what I'm going to do." And I started taking flying lessons at the local airport. I had a plan to just finish my first contract in the Navy. I was going to get out, go down to Embry-Riddle where I was already enrolled. I was taking classes online, finish my degree, and, go fly corporate or something like that. Didn't really have a big interest in the airlines. Always loved helicopters, but that was kind of out of reach for a civilian guy with not a lot of money. And then had a Navy chief. I was coming to the end of my shore duty and had a chief tell me that I should apply to fly for the Navy. So after talking to my family and looking at all my options, and decided to put in for the Seaman to Admiral program, which is they take about 400 guys a year. And at that time, it fluctuates based on needs. But at that time, they needed guys, and I applied to be a pilot in the program, got picked up for pilot right off the bat. Spent about another 10 months at my command waiting for admin stuff to clear and all that. And then, went up to Rhode Island and started officer training.
So that was after 8 years with the subservice.
Yeah, I got picked up right at my 8-year mark.
So that we're talking 2004, 2005, something like that. Okay,
yeah,
so
2004, I left Kings Bay, Georgia.
Just before the surge, kind of happened. And so they were definitely looking for a lot of people.
Looking for a lot of guys after.
Especially in the Navy, they were looking for a lot of guys. Like that's kind of what the recruiter was saying to me at that point in time. You know.
Yeah, we were definitely ramping up after 9/11.
What did you fly? What did you fly?
I was a helicopter pilot. So,
So how did that transpire? Because you said you wanted to fly. Did you initially go in and say, "Hey, I want to fly fixed wing," and then they were like, "Oh, we need helicopter pilots." How does that work?
Everybody in the Navy flies fixed wing first.
Okay.
So everybody goes through. I finished my degree. I got commissioned. All naval aviators go to Pensacola to go through aviation pre-flight indoc. I think it's 8 or 9 weeks. I can't remember. It was a million years ago. You learn water survival, all different kinds of stuff like that. Plus they put you through classes, naval aerodynamics for naval aviators and aircraft performance, all that kind of stuff. And then they push you off to primary flight training. And it's about 6 months. It's about 6 months long. Everybody at that time was flying the T-34 Charlie Mentor. It's a Beechcraft low wing turboprop. You get about 100 hours.
It's like a T6 Texan, isn't it? Is it like
so they use the T6? They use the Texan now.
Okay.
This was the predecessor to the Texan. Much more robust aircraft. You could do carrier landings all day long in that thing, and it was designed for it. It was a beast, but a lot of fun to fly. I had already had flight experience because I was flying in my off time in between deployments. I had about 300 hours in an instrument rating when I went to Navy flight school. So that was
impressive.
It was very helpful.
Yeah, that's impressive.
I was on an accelerated track because of my time, and it was. I always look back on this. I always tell people this. I did my first solo in the Navy on Monday. On Wednesday, I did my first aerobatic solo. So we solo. Tuesday was my first aerobatic flight. And then Wednesday, I did another aerobatic flight with an instructor, and then he cut me loose. And
awesome.
It was pretty neat to be, 2 days after flying this thing for the first time by myself. I'm flying upside down and
do a barrel roll,
doing barrel rolls and loops. And
what kind of plane is this?
T-34 Mentor. It's a low wing, single engine turboprop.
Yeah, it's an impressive plane, and definitely has a lot of capabilities. Like as far as aerials go, like a jet.
Sure.
As far as like doing barrel rolls and say.
There's South American Air Forces. They put guns on those and fly them around and
shoot cartel stuff
at them. And
that's
it's pretty
funny.
neat.
Yeah, that's
but
cool.
yeah, so I did that. Every Navy pilot's a fixed wing guy first. About half the pilots that go through training are going to wind up in helicopters. There's a thing. Most guys, they say about half the guys that go helos want it. The other half kind of get forced into it because you have to have pretty good grades to fly jets. And I had jet grades. I just didn't want the lifestyle.
What do you mean by that?
Their lifestyle is it's just a lot more squadron oriented. I wanted to, I had a wife and I wanted to build a family, and it was a little more family oriented. jet guys, you know, you don't take a jet out unless you do a 2-hour brief and a 3-hour debrief, and everybody's got to critique everything. And you eat, live, breathe that lifestyle for a lot of years. So helos were a little bit laid back. I always use the expression, I'd rather save lives than take them. And once I had the opportunity to fly helicopters, I knew that was my path. And you know, my favorite toy when I was a kid was a little helicopter. I always dreamed of flying them. I was always enamored with them. So, yeah.
What do they teach you on? Do they just go to the Blackhawks? They just say you're learning on a Blackhawk.
No,
from day one, or
you'll
what?
go from the T-34. There's 3 paths in the Navy. You go maritime, which guys are flying P-8 737 equivalents, or you'll go on the jet route, or you can go helicopters. And I went the helicopter route. Same base, different airfield, and we flew. At that time, it was like a Bell 206 variant.
Oh, okay. So like a bubble helicopter.
No, not quite a bubble helicopter. It was a TH-57, which is a Bell 206.
Okay.
So it's single engine. It's like
I'll look it up.
4 seats, 4 or 5 seats.
We need to get the feed. We need to get the feed set up so that we
What
can
was the
do.
nomenclature?
It's a TH-57.
So we can get this up, and we'll have you Google for us, Brian. Pull that up, Jamie.
Yeah, these are Jamie. So, yeah, and that was a lot of fun. About 120 hours in that training. And then at the end of that training, based on your scores, you put in what platform you want and where you want to go.
How many helicopter platforms are in the Navy? Like there's like the Sea Stallion, right? Like the Super Stallion,
the Navy
or whatever.
only has 60s now. It's just a variant
okay.
of 60 that you're going to fly. So at that time, it was Bravos, Foxtrots, Sierras, and Romeos.
What does that mean? I don't know.
So they're all 60s. They just do different missions. So the Sierra model is what I flew. It was the newest model. It was the coolest mission, I thought. Mainly logistics, combat search and rescue, vertical replenishment. Did a lot of
Sierra
training with, SEAL teams back stateside, fast ropes, paradrops, rappelling onto ships. Yep, that's the one. I flew that aircraft for 10 years. Absolutely loved it.
They don't have a Sea Stallion anymore. I thought they
No, they've replaced everything.
Okay.
Everything's a 60. And the 60 is such a iconic old design. It just does. It does.
It's a workhorse for sure.
They do still have the MH-53.
Which one is that?
That is a Sea Stallion. I actually thought you were referencing the older H3 models. Those were
the really big one that can like lift up like.
Yeah, so the Marines still operate that one.
Okay.
And then we have squadrons. We only have 2 of those squadrons left. And I'll be honest with you, it's been 9 years, and I don't know what the fate of those has become. They're the only ones that can do the anti-mine mission. So they'll actually hook a big sled to them, tow them around. Tow a sled through like canals and
Horsepower.
Yeah, a lot of horsepower. But they have a problem with maintenance on those. They crash more regularly than they should.
Yeah.
And
you run out of pilots real quick for that mission.
Yeah.
You don't survive helicopter crashes, as we've seen in recent history.
Yeah,
here.
so helos don't generally.
Did you get to like deploy with it as a pilot?
Oh sure, yeah. I after advanced training, I went out to San Diego, and I got with an expeditionary squadron. That was about another 6 months learning how to fly the H-60. The various missions that does, vertical replenishment, combat search and rescue. And then I went out, I did a vertical replenishment deployment about 5 or 6 months, which is on it's a Navy supply ship. And the supply ship gives supplies, obviously, to the carrier group. So the carrier group is out operating, and then once a week, the supply ship will come out, and we'll move cargo in between ships via external load and internal load. And we just had 2 helicopters, and we would just sling loads all day long, get the carrier topped off, and then we would run back to port, resupply, and then run back out and resupply all of the ships in the fleet. There's nothing sexy about vert rep, but it's the most fun you'll ever have.
Why is it the most fun?
The MH-60 Sierra is designed, it's just a tank, and you can push that thing to its limits. Our call sign was side flare, which means when you're flying forward, you slow down to 45 knots and then kick the tail over, and you use the fuselage of the aircraft for aerodynamic braking. And you can just come in, like, if I'm flying at you, I'll come in with an external load on, do a 180-degree turn as I'm descending and decelerating to touch that load on the deck, release it, and then fly right back out.
That's cool.
And you get really good and efficient. It's called doing the dance, is when you have one helicopter on the carrier dropping, and then you're picking, and then as you're lifting and sliding, he's dropping his and coming back down, and you're meeting nose to tail, and you're just doing a dance back and forth.
That's impressive.
And it's neat because when you're getting your external load hooked up on the supply ship, the carrier is like a wall in front of you. There's nowhere to go. They're normally in connected replenishment, which there's fuel lines and wires in between the ships, so you don't have much escape. So if the load's too heavy, you got to pickle the load. Comes up, and that means if the helicopter comes up and can't pull enough power to get the load off the deck, it'll exceed the tail rotor authority of the aircraft, and it'll start spinning. So you have to release that load, keep spinning around, and then escape behind you.
Interesting. So you did that for a while, and then you did some like in-country like evac stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, my second deployment as an aviator, I did 8 months in Kuwait and Iraq as a medevac pilot. It was a Naval Air Ambulance Detachment. We actually flew dust off for the Army. And that was very rewarding, a lot of fun. I got to do a bunch of cool stuff over there. Luckily, it was during the drawdown period, so I didn't see really hardly any combat injuries or anything. It was mainly just training stuff. But our unit, we had a split unit. One was down in Kuwait, one was up in Basra, Iraq, and then we would just split time between the two. And I was over there about 8 months.
Now, does the Navy make you go to SEER school?
Oh yeah.
Ooh. Dude, we're about to get into this shit. How bad was it?
Best training that I never want to do again. And it wouldn't be as valuable. If you did it twice, it just wouldn't be as valuable. But yeah, 7 days, Warner Springs, Southern California.
Is there, because I've always heard rumors, is there two different types of SEER schools?
We were ramping up special operations so much that the SEALs couldn't get spots at the SEER school.
Because all the pilots.
Because everybody in aviation has to go through as well.
Yeah.
So they established special operations only
SEER
schools to fill that need.
Is that where the Green Berets pipe through too?
We only had Navy guys that pipe through with us. There's a SEER up in Maine, I think it's Brunswick, and then Warner Springs down in San Diego. And I went through in San Diego, and everybody talks about, it was a lot warmer. It was 30 degrees at night. So it was pretty chilly, especially when you're naked and they have a fire hose on you.
Yeah. They're like actors, basically.
Yeah. They're enlisted Navy guys. It's a shore duty for them. So when I say shore duty, we do a sea duty where we're deployable for a number of years, and based on your job, it's a different ratio. But say you'll do 3 years on sea, and then you'll go to a non-deployable shore duty where you're still working 9 to 5. You stay on duty. That's their shore duty. That's their break from getting deployed. And they just go beat up other sailors for a living. But they screen them pretty heavily. Guys can get carried away. They can get into character a little too hard. Everybody gets hit. But, they have certain rules to kind of protect people. And if they go a little too far, which we had a guy that went a little too far, they kind of pull him to the side and go, hey, man. And it's always the joke when you're in, you're midweek into SEER school. And it's like, if I see any of these at the exchange.
Yeah, I bet.
I see you on base, dude. I'm gonna kill you.
Will they bring character in front of you?
No, never.
Did they keep you? I assume you stayed the night.
You're there for a week.
Yeah, they keep you there, right?
Yeah. So it's SEER is a 2-week process. You do Monday through Friday classroom, and then Friday night they take you up to the range, and you're there until Thursday morning.
Wow.
They don't feed you. I lost 20 pounds that week.
They just come and pick you up and bag you and
yeah, so it's serious survival, evasion, resistance, escape. So we start with survival, and then we start with and then we go to evasion. So Friday and Saturday was survival, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we started evading Sunday night. And then you try to evade for 24 hours. If you're not caught by Monday night, then you have to come in. That way they can start resistance and escape training.
Do they basically catch everyone?
Yeah, they catch everybody, and it's not hard. I mean, you haven't eaten since, when you're evading, you haven't eaten for a few days, minus the little lizard that I cooked in my canteen cup. And they throw They throw a Jolly Rancher at you every now and again, just to keep the glucose going in your brain so it still works.
I'm right here. You.
But oddly enough, I was never hungry. I was never tired.
Just adrenaline the whole time.
It's just, your stress levels are pretty high.
Yeah.
Sear was such an amazing experience. First time I've ever hallucinated. It's very interesting, and they stage you. So, you start out, once you get rolled up, they throw you in like a little, I call it like a little chicken coop. It was like 2 feet tall in the dirt underneath a platform, and they pack everybody in there, and it's hot as shit during the day, and you're just kind of crawling around in the dirt. Some guy opens a thing. He's eating a fried chicken. He throws it in there. Some dude picks it up and starts eating on it because he's hungry. And then they move you to a different facility. The first 12 hours was pretty interesting. Concrete cell. I don't know the dimensions. Maybe 5 by 5 or something like that. You're in your skivvies. You're soaking wet. Spray you down with a fire hose. But then they keep you up all night. So that's sleep deprivation training. And then they play very repetitive music to get your brain working in different ways. Babies crying, repetitive stuff. You'll start hearing, it'll be the same sound, and you'll hear 5 different words throughout the night because it'll morph into a different word as it repeats. And then they had this red light that they had in the hallway that causes visual hallucinations. On the debrief, it was funny, the psychologist, they don't tell you anything or why it happens, but it was like, hey, did anybody get anything from the red light? And I'm like, half of us put our hand up because I looked under the door to see where I was. How am I going to escape from this? And I looked under the door into the red light, and I knew for a fact, because they walked me in, there's another metal door right across the hall from me. Big metal doors, concrete cells. They would bang on them all night. If you were sleeping, they'd open the door and slap you in the face and beat you up and then stand you back up. And you weren't allowed to sit down either. So you had to stand on concrete, barefoot. If you hit the wall, they'd open up and smack the hell out of you. I knew for a fact that there was a metal door across from me. When I looked under that, I could see outside. I could see the clearing and a bonfire that we were at the night before. And I'm like, this is some valuable training. That was the first hallucination.
Yeah.
And the second hallucination, they make you carry a piss bucket with you all week. So if you got to go to the head, it's right there and you're carrying it with you. So it's there. And I'm sitting there and I look down at my piss bucket. And those little Chinese dragons, those little toy Chinese dragons that have like the links on them?
Yeah.
I saw one of those little dudes pop out of my piss bucket. And he was just the happiest little guy. He just pops up. He's like, hey, brother, what's going on?
I hate to meet you right now.
And then he's down to my right. I'm like, God damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're getting into it. I punched myself in the face at that point just to see if it would go away. And it didn't. He like looked around. He was kind of checking out his environment. And then he just he flew up out of the bucket and was doing like little S turns and then flew off into the, looked behind. He's like, went off in the corner. I'm like, wow, some good stuff, man.
Now, do they try to question you?
Not at that time. So they're prepping you for all that. At that time, it's, they're just breaking you down. Sleep deprivation is one of the most effective torture techniques a human being can go through. So in the morning, they pulled us out of there and they threw us in concrete. We call them dog boxes. They're basically, they're about like 2 feet by 2 feet. And you had to sit in them. You had to back into them. And like the dog box is on the top of your neck. So you're kind of bent over. They make you sit on a 4x4 piece of wood. You got your piss bucket in, right between your legs. And then there's a curtain. And that was a couple days in that thing. Same thing with, like, they would just, the only time they would pull you out, they'd smack you around a little bit and then throw you back in. Then came the resistance portion of questioning. And I think that was, Wednesday or something. And then they pull you in, they get you to answer questions and things like that. And you know, as military members, you know, you're allowed to, you know, name, rank, serial number.
Yeah.
But everyone breaks at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this training's so valuable. Is, you know, you can feed them as much information as you want as long as it's not true.
Right.
So you try and, you know, evade and resist that kind of stuff. But one of my most memorable things of getting questioned is this big dude. He's a contractor. He must have been like 260, 270 pounds. And he's off in the corner and he's eating this peanut butter. He's got dill pickles and he's dipping them in peanut butter. And I haven't eaten in like 5-6 days. And they're like, where's your unit? What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Bop, bop. You know, it's like, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, man, I like to eat that pickle. And this guy comes over to me and he grabs me by my rag. They call them rags. Grabs me by my shirt and he's like, grab your rags. You got to put your hands down so you don't hit them.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, the natural reaction is to punch somebody who just punched you in the face.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of funny because he grabbed me. I'm not a small guy. I'm not huge, but, and he starts slamming me against the wall. And I'm like, dude, I played football. I wrestled. Like, this doesn't hurt. And he was screaming while he was doing it. And a piece of that pickle and peanut butter flew into my mouth. And all I remember thinking like, oh man, that tastes really good.
Delicious.
It's been 5 days, man. I was hungry.
Now, after, do you get to meet them?
Yeah, after we all shook hands and hey, don't beat me up when you see me on base, kind of thing. But yeah, it was good.
Well, the escape portion of that. What did that involve?
They teach the escape portion. You're always looking for different options.
Ways out.
Yeah, ways out.
Nobody implemented that though.
They try. A couple guys tried, but they all get caught, and then they get drugged back in. They make an example out of them. Yeah, they're trying to teach you to. They're really teaching you how to survive, because if you die in a POW scenario, then it's really a waste of training and in a military asset. They want you to come home,
right?
In hopefully one piece. So yeah, it was really, really, really fun, valuable. Definitely.
You're kind of an adrenaline junkie though, so like that probably helped a lot. There's probably some people though on the other side of the spectrum that were like, I'm done. I don't want to do this. Did anybody like quit or?
No, nobody quit.
Okay.
They're definitely, but it's interesting. Human psychology has always been an interest of mine, and you run the gamut. When you put people in stressful scenarios, you get all different kinds of reactions. You get people like me that enjoy a little bit of it because it's stressful, and then you get other guys that just nobody really folded. Nobody's we all knew it was make-believe, but they do a really, really effective job of making the training realistic.
Sure.
They, at the end of the training, right at the point where everybody's just like, okay, we've had enough.
Yeah.
They actually burn an American flag in front of you. And it's all like, they go around to like schools and stuff that have flags that are tattered.
Sure.
And they're a unit that's allowed to do this.
Sure.
You know. It's the only way to properly dispose of a flag. But they do that right at the end, and they're like, screw your country, and they set your flag on fire, and everybody just like...
Yeah.
And right at that moment, dude snaps to attention, Old Glory goes up, and they start playing the national anthem, and everybody's just like, oh my God, thanks. Thanks. It's over.
Did they feed you guys after? And
no. What the amazing part is, they throw you in a car and say, drive home. Like the psychologist, we did the debrief, and with the debrief, the psychologist was like, "We've debated busing you guys back to base." They told us the stress level that you're under at that point is equivalent to a fighter pilot on a low level bombing mission, but they keep you at that level. Like that fighter pilot's there for like 8 hours. They keep you there for 6 days, and weight just sheds off your body, and you're like, I drove home, and you're dirty, no shower, hair's
you were married to Melissa at this point.
Had a kid.
Okay, so you walked in the front door.
Literally walked in the front door, and I was
What'd she say?
And I was talking a mile a minute, and she's just she's like, are you okay? I'm like, are you hungry? I'm like, not really. It's kind of
peanut butter pickles around this joint.
Yeah, I think she made me a peanut butter sandwich.
Dude, I'm here to tell you, like, if somebody comes out with them bamboo shoots that are shoving in your fingernails and shit, I'll be like, They're over there. Him, it was him. He did it.
Yeah. We had a guy who was a Marine Corps officer who was actually a POW in Iraq that would come and speak to every class.
Oh, wow.
And ironically, he never got to go to SEER school because he was at a time he was too senior. He had to go and do other things. He was just supposed to go to SEER school before deployment, and they canceled it for some reason. And then he winds up getting shot down. And he's like, it's one thing if you don't know anything. He goes, I just got the brief on the whole war when I got shot down.
Do you remember Bo Birddaw, the guy that...
I heard about that guy, yeah.
He's from my unit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We used to get his mail and shit.
Where is this guy?
Yeah. He was fucking with the Taliban.
He just left.
Yeah. He was with... And his squad leader was my platoon sergeant.
Okay.
That's crazy.
And he was getting paid the whole time. He was getting paid. He came back. He's the one who walked off a base.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, you would know well as I know, if you go to any bazaar, somebody's calling somebody to come pick you up.
Right.
That's not a good person.
Yeah.
And
You're gonna get rolled. You're gonna get rolled up.
Anything else that was memorable about any of your deployments?
I got a million stories, but you know,
what did you think of the UH-60s they used on the Bin Laden raid?
those are pretty specialized breed. The 160th has some pretty cool toys. Like the Romeo models, they had all the anti-submarine stuff, and they would go out and, you know, drop sonobuoys and try and hunt submarines. We didn't do any of that stuff. We were medevac logistics for combat search and rescue was the most fun. Working with SEALs was the most fun. I never got to do that downrange. The Navy only had 2 squadrons that did it, and that was a pretty hard fraternity to get into, which I tried multiple times. Just timing wasn't right. I was a junior guy at the time, and they actually wound up shutting the squadron down right as I was getting out of the Navy.
Okay. I
applied, the last thing I applied to do before I retired was to go to one of those squadrons for like the 4th time.
Was that, would that be considered like the 160th sword?
It was the Navy's version of the 160th. So it was HSC 84 and 85 were the Naval Special Operations Squadrons. We had one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast. 85 on the West Coast, which I tried to get into, but they took like 2 guys a year.
Yeah, because everyone stays, and
everybody, once you get in it, you're in it, and everybody wanted, not everybody, but I wanted to be in it. I volunteered to do back-to-back sea tours. I wanted to go 885 and just go do downrange stuff, and didn't get the chance to do it. But they shut both those squadrons down. The 160th supports all Special Operations Command stuff now.
Can you transfer, like if you were still in, could you be like, hey, I want to go fly for the 160?
I found out, like right before I retired, I actually found out you could do that. The wife and kids kind of were ready to have me back home.
Yeah.
It was not the time.
So you finished your last deployment, and then you came back to, you had some peacetime that you were, or did you retire like right after your last
I retired
deployment?
In 2016. I came back from the desert in 11. I transferred out in 12. I went down to Key West to do search and rescue down there. The Navy has a jet training base down there. So anytime a Navy jet is in the air, there's a helicopter on standby to do search and rescue. We assist the National Search and Rescue Plan on an as-needed basis, but Navy SAR exists to support jet guys.
So did you end up fishing anybody out of the water?
Sure.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, plenty.
All right.
Yeah, a lot of people coming over from Cuba.
Okay.
They build these.
No pilots though.
No pilots. No. We didn't have any. We didn't have any
Cubans.
Oh yeah,
float in on fucking igloo coolers and shit.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. We used to. It was funny because we had these little stickers with like Cuban guy and a cigar. Yeah. So every time you found a raft, you would, or rescued anybody, you get a little sticker on your helmet.
It's hilarious.
And it's a hot topic down there too, because the Cubans, they'll build anything to float over. It's 90 miles. I think I found 3 different groups. You know, they'd wash up on an island, we'd circle them. If they were okay, you kind of tell if they're okay. We just call the Coast Guard and they would come out and get them. But there's a wet foot, dry foot policy down there. Clinton put it into action back in the 90s whenever he was trying to get reelected and get the Florida vote. He made it so if a Cuban touches U.S. soil, you are now a U.S. citizen.
Oh shit! So it's like a race.
So yeah. So not only that is they take them up to Miami, they do a background check on them, then they give them money. You give them money and say, welcome to America.
Holy shit.
It's insane. And the Cubans that came here legally in the Keys,
They all
absolutely hate those
that,
people.
yeah.
We legit rescued some people right before I transferred out of there. There was a boat with 11 people. They were in pretty bad shape. They'd been there for 4 or 5 days in August. You know, the currents, the way they are, they just kind of got stalled and were just swimming around there. So a fishing boat found them, called on Maritime 16. We happened to be in the area. I made a beeline. Just so happened my rescue swimmer spoke Spanish, which was very helpful. But you have to weigh, are we going to dry foot these people, or are we going to call the Coast Guard? And because if it's wet foot and they don't touch ground, you just call the Coast Guard. They come get them and they take them back to Havana and drop them back off. So you don't dry foot somebody unless it's life, limb, eyesight, something like that. My rescue swimmer, I told him, I said, dude, do not dry foot these people unless you really have to. Make sure. So I sent him down the hook. We're in a 70-foot hover, and there was like 1 female and like 10 males. And he's got a radio. I'm like, hey, how's everybody doing? He's like, they're pretty bad. He goes, but I think most of them are faking it. He goes, one woman's passed out. I think we probably need to bring her up. And I said, are you sure? He said, sir, I dunked her 3 times and she didn't move.
When's the last time you flew?
Yesterday?
In a helicopter?
Well, not in a Navy helicopter, no.
In a regular helicopter?
Yeah. Well, I haven't flown a regular helicopter in about 2 years, but I'm getting back into that too. But yeah, I fly jets now.
So you retired and then
Yeah,
what was
so
the next step?
I retired in 2016, moved back here. My dad passed away, and there was we have a family farm back here, and my brother and I kept it in the family and didn't want to get rid of it. So after I retired, I moved back to Sandy Lake, Pennsylvania with my kids. They were about 8 and 6 at the time. Never farmed before in my life, and bought like 2 cows and 10 pigs and 100 chickens and started farming. But I also got a job as a medevac pilot in the local area, flying air ambulance.
Would that be stat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Did that for 6 years. 2 years ago, I had an opportunity to learn how to fly corporate jets. I wanted to move on and learn something different. So started flying corporate jets, worked for a company out of Grove City for a year. And then I had an opportunity to move up to a much larger company, much bigger fleet, better opportunity kind of thing. And so I started with them last June, and I've been flying with them for almost a year now. Going to start flying medevac again here. I started 2 weeks ago.
Like part-time.
Going to go back part-time, part-time casual, and just pick up shifts and help guys out when they need it. But yeah, I was really missing the helo flying. So to be able to do fixed wing and rotary, fixed wing full-time, rotary part-time has always been a dream of mine, kind of a personal mountaintop.
Now, does it translate over, like, could you get in a Little Bird? Could you get in a Chinook?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, with the right training, it wouldn't take very long, but like every jet I fly, you have to go get a type rating for. And the jet that I flew in Grove City, I had to go through a 18-day program to go get typed in that jet. Helicopters are a little bit easier to fly. You do have type ratings for them. You have to get trained on each one. You know, aviation's aviation. You know, the controls all do the same thing.
We need a helicopter.
Well, that's what I said. Like, we need to get him to link up with Dawn at Green Line and then do the tactical helicopter, like,
Isn't
target
there a helicopter
acquisition.
we can rent?
Yeah, we talked about this. If you got this far in the podcast and you're listening to this, donate to the fund of
Give
us
us your
getting...
helicopter. Give us your helicopter fund.
Yeah, so we're taking donations to get Travis certified on a rental helicopter so he can shoot stuff from the sky here at the shop. So
That'd be
if anybody wants to donate to that, we've opened the phone lines are open. Brian will be taking your credit card information. We'll say it's for $1, but we'll probably charge you like 10 to handle max that shit out.
Yeah, there's nothing cheap about aviation.
We actually, I don't know if you watched, but I had a funny story. Well, it wasn't funny at the time, but it's funny now. We were coming to get picked up by 2 Chinooks, and they had set up belt feds on and the Chinook pilot. He was talking to our JTAC guy, and I don't know why it was a bad spot to land, but we had been all day in this really bad area, and of course everyone's like, get us the fuck out of here. I mean, they were on the fucking radio all day. We're gonna attack him again. Obviously speaking Pashto, but yeah. So we went in because there was a bunch of firefights and stuff that happened, and mortars were shot. So we had to go do a BDA of the battle damage assessment of what hit. Blah 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 blah. But it was a lot of walking, and then when we came out, it was nighttime. So the birds came in to pick us up. First, they picked up the sniper team first. They came out. Nothing happened to them. Of course, 20 minutes later, our Chinooks come back in, and they had already set up. It was probably PKMs or something like that. As soon as the Chinook like turned, because I don't know, you've seen them land. They like do this turning thing, and then it touched the ground. Just tracers just started coming at us, and I'm like, it looked like Star Wars, like multiple positions, fucking tracers, and you could hear it go ting 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 ting, like because they were hitting the bird. And dude, I've never seen a helicopter move that fast. That dude was like, like he like barrel rolled the Chinook out of there, and I'm like, no. And so I could hear the JTAC talking. He's like, break, because we had Apaches in the air too, and the Apaches had pushed off over because. I don't know. I never got into. I just knew I felt better when there was air assets up top. I don't know if Apaches have like some sort of thermal or night vision up there, what they're looking at.
They have an IR, yeah.
Okay. But they were pushed off over on the other side of the village, and he was getting in contact with it. Hey, we're taking contact from the east side, blah, blah, blah. So the Apache swung over, and I could hear him switch over to the Chinook pilot, and he's and I could hear on my radio, hey, we're gonna come back in one more time. If we get shot at again, you guys are fucking staying there. But he came in so fast and so hard, like on that second landing. I remember the crew chief dude that was on the 240. He was in the back of the bird. Get the fuck on the bird! I'm like, shoot back! What are you doing? But yeah, that was funny.
And you do a lot of like adrenaline stuff, like base, like you jump and you
sky fly wing suits, a base jump.
Yeah,
that's just hobby stuff.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you coming in, and you brought this along too, which is cool to talk about. This is a P365, but this has the Sharps Brothers lower on it. It's a full metal lower, and you can change out the panels on the grip too. And it's got this gas pedal on either side. So like you're a lefty, aren't you?
Nope.
No, you're just the evil-handed one here. But it's got gas pedals on either side, which is really, really nice. I love John's probably like one of the nicest guys in the industry that owns this company. And I think you guys should go and support him if you don't have one of these. He makes them for a bunch of different, he makes chassis for rifles. He makes chassis for the SIG stuff, and which makes the SIG stuff, better. Like
that completely, in my opinion,
it's completely changed.
Totally transformed that gun.
100%.
It's my favorite gun. I bought it as a carry. And obviously you stay current with it, but now that I have that, it's a joy to shoot. Yeah, John, you are always the nicest guy to meet. I always appreciate stopping by your booth and talking to you. You do a really great job. So I know you probably never see this, but it doesn't matter. You do an awesome job, and if you're watching, you should go and patronize his website, because he does a great job on all the chassis stuff that they do over at Sharps Brothers.
They had a booth, didn't they?
Yeah, we went over and talked to him. Yeah. He's always like super, super nice guy. So, but we've run out of time. I appreciate everybody watching, as you do every week, and join us next week. We'll be with Kim, KJ Kamikaze 86 is their handle. So we'll meet you back next week.